If there is anything that I love as much as fighting games, it would be anime. I mean, honestly, anime is some of the best media in general, but it comes with some recurring issues. You see, anime studios want to make a profit. Animation is expensive, and they do not want to die. So, in order to avoid death, they turn to the all-powerful consumer market. In order to help them pick the right source material that will make them the most money, be it light novels, manga, and even webcomics. You see, the consumer market has one rule: what is popular is what sells. So when one series does really well, other studios join in the gold rush to find something similar because it's
easy money!
But with similar anime comes the problem of similar weaknesses and oversaturation. But every once in a while, something slips through the cracks and grows to help solve these weaknesses. And I can think of no better recent example than One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100 by One, who found success by solving one of the biggest problems known to anime: the overpowered character. Before we talk about how one does it, we need to first lay down some groundwork by introducing two key concepts from the wonderful world of writing: conflict and stakes. Conflict is the driving force of the story, basically who or what the main character has to face in order to get to their goal. Stakes, on the other hand, are the risk involved with the conflict to give it meaning. In order for the character to be invested in the conflict, there has to be a reward for success and a punishment for failure. The bigger the reward and the punishment, the more powerful the conflict. Now, conflict itself is more complex than just having a reason for two people to duke it out. It comes in 6 different forms: man versus man, man versus nature, man versus technology, man versus the supernatural, man versus society, and man versus self. Man versus man is the most common type of conflict used. You have your protagonist, who has a goal, and your antagonist, who is in the way of that goal. And someone has to win, and someone has to lose. From here, you get your anime fights, your competitions, and your talk no jutsu. Man vs. Nature is all about survival. The protagonist of the story has to brave the forces of nature, be it floods, dangerous animals, disease, earthquakes, and everything in between. Man vs. Technology is basically when technological advancements become a problem for the main character. From a big robot uprising, to a rogue virus that wants to nuke the entire world, to robot girl supremacy, and everything in between. Man vs. the supernatural is much like man vs. man, but the main difference is that the protagonist isn't fighting another one of their kind, but something else. Think everything kinda human, but not. Like demons, ghosts, aliens, zombies, you name it. If it's not natural, it's supernatural. Kinda why the super is there. Man vs. society is when the protagonist has to face the most oppressive force known to man: other people. These kinds of stories normally involve the protagonist trying to fix some kind of injustice in the current society, having to deal with being an outsider or undesirable, or just trying to bring everyone around to a new idea. For the last one, we have man vs. self. This one is a bit different from the others. While the rest are about dealing with outside forces acting upon the character, man vs. self is all about dealing with the inner self, when your mindset gets in your way. Many stories like to use this type of conflict lightly, as it is a pretty easy way to let the viewer relate to the character. That being said, not many stories like to take man vs. self as the main source of conflict. People are complex, and it's pretty hard to put that complexity into writing, which is why most stay away from it. Most stories don't just stick with one type of conflict, as using different types of conflict together can amplify its effects on the story. Now, take all that we just learned and throw it out the window, because that is what an overpowered character does. For the simple fact that you can't have conflict or stakes with an overpowered character. They don't struggle, they don't risk anything. All they do is win. So the story is made boring and predictable because of them. I mean, how are you going to get excited about a straightforward story with no twists and turns? You already know the outcome and exactly how it gets there. So now that we know the problem, how are we going to fix it? Well, there have been attempts made to fix this issue, like giving the character some kind of kryptonite-like weakness, putting the overpowered ability behind a limited resource like mana, adding a rival who is just as powerful so there is at least some kind of threat, or the most beloved fix of all, power creep, used by anime, gacha games, and card games alike, creating the ultimate feedback loop, where you keep adding bigger and stronger threats to compete with the already too powerful main character, who grows even more powerful in order to beat the new threat. And it keeps going and going until you get to something crazy like fighting different universes with Ultra Drip Goku. But if any of those fixes don't work, you can always just let the character be overpowered and make it a comedy. And one uses this as a stepping stone to his true fix to the overpowered character. You see, one fixes the overpowered character by making his main character sympathetic, making it so we, the viewer, identify with the ultra powerful. He does this by doing three things. 1. He uses comedy to introduce the character and how unbelievably strong they are, invalidating what should be the main conflict type of the story. Only to then 2. Change the conflict type to one where their abilities is ultimately useless, so they can 3. Struggle with relatable issues that we honestly all deal with. So by the time the new conflict type is set in, we are already engaged and rooting for him to succeed. Let's take a look and see how this applies to the main characters of One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100. Saitama and Shigeo Kageyama, also known as Mob. Saitama and Mob are, as far as we know, the most powerful beings in the world. So powerful that they basically one-shot the main sources of danger in their stories. For Saitama, his physical strength makes it so any monsters or villains that cross his path are a non-issue. And for Mob, his psychic powers make it so any ghosts or other espers that cross his path are also a non-issue. So, in order to keep this from being absolutely boring, their power is played off as a joke. I mean, it's pretty funny watching monsters play themselves up like they are the most dangerous thing in the world, only to be defeated by someone who thinks nothing of it. But jokes can't last forever. Jokes die from overuse. Luckily, one understands this and quickly shifts to the next part, changing the main conflict type of the story. Now that we have made a mockery of the more standard type of conflict, it's time to introduce one that doesn't strip their powers, but basically makes them useless. For Saitama, his story's conflict was all about beating up monsters and villains, and being a hero and saving people. But he's so strong that he finds no challenge in it. So he changes his goal from being a hero to being a known hero, as we are shown that nobody really knows who he is. What was once man versus man is now man versus society, as he has to prove to the rest of the world that he is a worthwhile hero. It should be easy for him to be popular with his unrivaled strength. But that's the problem. Saitama is so strong that no one actually believes that anyone can be that strong. And that's just one of the roadblocks he faces. And it's not like he could just strong arm people into loving and respecting him, because, well, that's kind of what villains do. As for Mob, his story is a little bit different, as instead of society or the supernatural, Mob is fighting himself. Mob's powers are linked to his emotions, causing him to force himself to have a more subdued personality in order to better handle his emotions so they won't go out of control and hurt people. Because of this, Mob seeks to make himself a better person and have skills outside of his psychic powers, which no amount of powers can do for him. And let me tell you, he has quite the way to go. Mob is not physically strong at all. He doesn't have any stamina. He's not socially skilled. And he's not exactly big-brained as well. But that is one's trick. He turns the weakness of having an overpowered character into a strength by having the character struggle with things that power cannot fix and turning it into a hook. We want to see Saitama climb up the hero's popularity ladder from the bottom to the top and finally have the masses give him credit for his work, because we can understand and relate to being the low man on the totem pole. We also want to see Mob build himself into a better person in order to gain more self-confidence in himself so that he can finally fully control his powers, because everyone wishes to build a better version of themselves. We want to see these characters overcome social pressures and self-doubt, and I would say this is how one fixes anime. I would like to thank you for watching. One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100 are amazing animes, and you should watch it. Also, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and like the video and subscribe for more anime and fighting game videos. And while you're down there, let me know your favorite anime based on the 6 types of conflict. Have a good day, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.